Hello, BookTube. Who's up for another library tour? This is the 8th bookshelf of the tall east wall bookcase, the last bookshelf. So we've managed to get all the way through the tall east wall bookcase of this little book room of mine. And we're at the bottom shelf. We'll once again start off with the transverse books. There's only one, and it's lovely. It's something that I got specifically because of how lovely it was when there used to be many, many editions. It's The Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott, which will cause, let me see if we can get that to glint in the sunlight, cause many of you of a certain age to say, The Lady of the what? By Sir Walter who? But once upon a time, it was the most popular poem in the English-speaking world. And once upon a time, he was the most popular novelist in the English-speaking world. And I love The Lady of the Lake. And I love this little edition. Don't remember where I got it, but I've never found an edition I like better. And it's not like the 2017 book market is going to be flooded with editions of The Lady of the Lake, so I'm going to hold on to it just the same. The next one is one of these. I think in this room before we've seen annotated editions, these big Harvard annotated editions that they do so well. This is the Annotated Origins, the Annotated Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, which I think is just lovely, and I love the annotations. It's actually an original text that needs them. I'm always a little ambivalent when they do an annotated text of Pride and Prejudice or something like that, or even Dracula, which might need a note here and there, but copious annotations leads you to suspect that somewhere along the line somebody thinks the original text is incomprehensible without them. And nothing could be further from the truth. You can pick up Dracula anytime and be thrilled by it. But the origins, not so much. So an annotated edition is really good, really useful, and this is my favorite one. And also, I like the look of it. I had the advanced copy, and then I had the finished copy, and then I got the paperback. Got rid of the advanced copy, got rid of the finished copy, and I was looking at the paperback probably a year ago, and I was thinking, there's another book that I'd like a hardcover of, but no, this is just fine. This is actually better than the hardcover. In this particular case. Then we have an oldie but a goodie. This is To Prove a Villain. This is the case of King Richard III of England. And it's, by the case, they mean they give you what we could call his documents. For you to question his worth as a ruler and also his guilt or innocence in the legendary killing of the princes in the Tower. So you get Shakespeare's play. You get all of the 15th and 16th century histories that Shakespeare was relying on. And also as an extra treat, you get later essays about the princes in the Tower. And the last part of the book is the entirety of Josephine Tey's novel, The Daughter of Time, which is all about the case of Richard and the princes in the Tower, and which is a modern murder mystery that you really should read if you haven't. It's very good. And also a little bit unusual, since it's one of the only murder mysteries that I've ever read where the detective is laid up in bed the whole time. It's an intellectual adventure, purely. It can't be anything else because he has a broken leg. Now then we move on to an old, something we've seen as a theme, even in this bookcase alone, old travel books. I have a sweet tooth for old travel books. And this is the greatest one of them all, The Royal Road to Romance by Richard Halliburton. This is his, it'll have... Oh no. Okay, I opted for a little old hardcover of this book. You can get it in any kind, or used to be able to get it in any kind of edition. And actually, there was a larger, liberally illustrated edition of this with color photographs all throughout. That I, for some reason, don't have, and now that I'm seeing this, I'm realizing that I want it. That's the edition that I want. So it'll show up at the Brattle. It scarcely show up anywhere else in the world but the Brattle. But nobody beats him for how he writes about his many travels all over the world back before regulation and regimentation took over the activity of travel. I think I've mentioned it before on this channel. He's pretty much the last of the grand world travelers in the old style way of doing it, either him or me. and then the world clamped down. Then quarantines happened. Then passports happened. Then punitive border crossings happened. And all of a sudden, you could do pre-planned routes that you paid for ahead of time, but you couldn't freeboot without seriously risking your life. And I don't know if I have a larger illustrated edition. I'm halfway thinking that I do. So I'm resisting the urge right now to get up and wander around this room, which is what I do with most of my spare time. So, then we move on to a novel, a classic of mine. I mentioned it many times on this channel. This is The Last Hurrah by Edwin O'Connor. I have this hardcover, and I have the University of Chicago Press just recently came out with a beautiful paperback reprint that I have as well. But I have this one in the room because this is the one I've had forever. And then we have two huge anthologies from the same publisher. These things came out years and years ago, and I love them. I actually go back to them. And the first one is the unabridged Mark Twain, which I love, even though it has opening remarks by Kurt Vonnegut. And it's got a huge amount of his stuff, but even so, there's a second volume. There's a second unabridged Mark Twain that I'm just waiting to find in a hardcover with a dust jacket. The Brattle will provide it. It will show up. I've seen it there in a paperback, but the paperbacks of these things fall apart. Which is going to make a little strange the next book, which is a paperback of these things. It's the paperback of their Shakespeare, which is, I have it in the paperback, and I have reinforced it 6 ways from Sunday in an attempt to keep it from falling apart. And the reason that I have it as opposed to having the hardcover is because the hardcover doesn't look as good as this. I've never found a hardcover of this from Running Press, from Courage Books. I've never found a hardcover that has this cover, where the P of poems and the S of sonnets of the plays of Shakespeare. For some reason, I just like that. And if memory serves correctly, every time I've seen a hardcover of this in the Running Press hardcover edition, it hasn't looked like this. It hasn't had this as a dust jacket. If I'm wrong, if I ever find it in a hardcover with this dust jacket, then I'll snap it up in a heartbeat, because it will definitely last longer than the paperback. And then the next one is one author. We have 3 books with one author. He's out of print. He'll never come back into print. He's gone. But I love him dearly. His name is Thomas Costain, and he did grand swashbuckling histories. There is our author right there, of England. He did grand swashbuckling histories of England. The first one is The Magnificent Century, then The Conquerors, and then The Three Edwards. And he did a bunch of others, but I found these all together at the Brattle one day and just realized, I love reading these things so much. I love rereading them so much. I go elsewhere for the latest facts or the new documentary evidence, but I go here for someone who has digested it all and is trying to tell it in a grand style, and I just love that. So I do go back to these books, which is why I have them in here, and it's why I've reinforced them. And then we have a bit of an oddity. This is a 16th century work of Japanese literature called by Ihara Saikaku, called The Great Mirror of Male Love. And it's a collection of stories of samurais and their amorous adventures with muscular teenage boys. And it's had a long and complicated print history in English, and I found this copy, I think, at the Brattle. I didn't mark it, but I believe I found this at the Brattle and realized I didn't have a copy. And the stories are fascinating, absolutely fascinating. What is and is not permitted? What is and is not encouraged in those relationships? Impossible for me, for instance, not to draw parallels between these stories and Periclean Athens, or the Italian Renaissance, where there's this carefully and extensively codified schema of how and when and why older men may consort with muscular teenage boys. It's not always permissible, and there are all kinds of things about it that are never permissible, but parts of it are, and it's fascinating to me. So I have it in here because I do reread it. I would love to find a nice big, beautiful hardcover English translation of this work, because I can't handle the Japanese. But I have a feeling, and just call it a wild intuition, that Penguin Classics will never reprint this book. so I'll have to stick with the paperback copy that I have. The next one is, again, another iteration of the same theme of old travel books. This is just a delightful thing. Around the World in 2,000 Pictures. It's all black and white, and it takes you everywhere. There's Maine. It takes you all over the place. It takes you all over the world, and there's hardly any text. Every page is just picture after picture after picture, and I love it, even though it's totally invalid now. Almost none of it applies anymore. So it's, in addition to being around the world and in 2,000 pictures, it's also deep into the past. in 2,000 pictures. That's fine by me. And then the next one is a dog book, and it's in this room because it's a favorite of mine, but it's not an easy book. It's The Last Walk. It's by Jessica Pierce, and the subtitle is Reflections on Our Pets at the End of Their Lives. And it was not in this room 5 years ago. It's here now because I'm back in it. This is the period of dog ownership that dog owners tend not to talk about, even with each other. And I'm back in that period now. And the reflections, this is the best book I've ever read on the subject, and the reflections in it are heartbreaking but wonderful and make you nod your head if you're in that stage. So it's in here for now. Then we have a double blast of a rabble-rouser. The first one is The Portable Atheist, edited by Christopher Hitchens. This is it's a collection of bits and pieces, essays, quotes, sections of books about atheism that appealed to him. It's basically his scrapbook. Edited by him is a little bit of the wrong word, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting book, and I love the job that was done with the paperback. I think it's Da Capo Press. Yeah, it's Da Capo Press did a really good matching job with this and the other one, which is the Portable Hitchens, the Quotable Hitchens. This is just his favorite bits and pieces from his columns, his books, his speeches, on all subject headings, all neatly arranged for the young and up and coming rabble rouser as a reference work. And then the last book, the last one that we'll do on this shelf, is something I mentioned on this channel before. It's The World Without S by Alan Weisman, in which he theorizes what would happen. He imagines a scenario in which humanity, all of humanity, vanishes in an instant tomorrow. What would happen to the world in a day, and then in a month, and then in a year, and then in 100 years, and then in 1,000 years? What would happen if mankind were summarily removed from the picture? What would the natural world do? And every page of it is fantastic. I just love it. I have my issues with a lot of it, but I just love it. Like, for instance, I think I mentioned on this channel before, the main issue that I have with it is nuclear power, nuclear radiation, which Alan Weisman, it's an optimistic book that he's writing, so he's upbeat about the fate of nuclear power in the world without mankind, and he shouldn't be, in my opinion. Because there are active nuclear piles on military vessels all over the world right now, and there are active nuclear piles on land all over the place that require human intervention in order not to melt down. It's not like if humans weren't there, they would simply go quiet. They would blow up without humans. And the same is true even of ones. Oh, here you go, baby. I can't make that. There you go. The same is true even of ones that have blown up, like, for instance, the famous reactors at Chernobyl. Look at that. Here are the people on BookTube. The famous reactor at Chernobyl requires human intervention, or it will vent all of its radioactivity into the atmosphere. It's an ongoing construction project of a kind that most people think, well, yeah, no, that was caught and it's fixed. But no, no, it's not. And it's just the most marquee example. There are dozens and dozens of other examples that would go rogue if humans weren't around. In other words, it's my contention, but not Alan Weisman's contention, that humans are such a horrible species that not only have they damaged the planet beyond repair, but they've also created all over the world dead man switches to do damage even once they're gone. So the imaginary scenario that he creates in which humanity disappears in an instant would have to take those things with it. Otherwise, the projections that he makes in his book would be very different. The planet would become a nuclear wasteland with huge nuclear radioactive fronts sweeping around the world like tsunamis, and eventually getting everywhere. It's I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he's right. I don't see the physics behind it. But one way or another, that's it. That is the eighth and final bookshelf of the tall east wall bookcase. So we did it. We climbed this little Everest, and we'll move on from here. Thank you, BookTube.